Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to another episode of Media Matters for Anfield Index. How do you follow up a draw against United? It's defeat in the Carabao. Now, technically, you can argue it's half time in this. It was better than United. It wasn't the result we wanted. There's a million things to talk about around last night. Rumours, injuries, illness, and all sorts of things. And here to join me as ever is the renowned and the respected David Lynch. I mean, it's not far off 24 hours later, David, and it wasn't as bad as Manchester United, but it wasn't a great performance, really, was it?
No, I think you can say that Liverpool they didn't put in a performance where you came away and felt like they'd been robbed of a victory by any means. It wasn't they were hitting the post and they were unlucky or whatever, anything like that. But it absolutely was a game where a 0-0 draw would have been spot on in terms of a reflection of the game as a whole. Neither side showing enough attacking quality. Liverpool controlling it mostly, but not really showing any real cutting edge, and Spurs not. It was the side who were probably looking to hit on the counter, didn't really create many opportunities through that. So a 0-0 would have been absolutely fair. Obviously, in the end, Liverpool end up with a 1-0 defeat, and it comes in the 86th minute. So that adds to the disappointment, on top of the fact that they've just had a bit of a disappointing draw with Manchester United. So I guess that's the reason there's been the reaction. But for me, it's been unbelievably over the top, to be honest. Some of the shouts I've seen on social media since, and I know that's not always an accurate barometer, but I'm sure, I just can't believe it, really, how kind of over the top a lot of it's gone. As you rightly point out, it's only half time in this tie. Liverpool absolutely didn't deserve to get beat yesterday. Spurs didn't deserve to win. You can absolutely categorically say that. But sometimes kind of squiffy things happen in football, odd things, and it was one of those. And yet they've still got a chance to turn that around. They're not in an absolutely terrible position. But I think heads are completely falling off, which for me is just, given the position Liverpool are in, I just find it absolutely remarkable, to be honest. Just really bizarre. It wasn't fantastic, and no one should be saying that. But it also wasn't so bad that we need to fear that Liverpool are going to throw the entire season away. So I've been pretty amazed by some of the reactions, to be honest.
Yeah, if that goal doesn't go in, it finishes 0-0, and everyone's like, it's decent to take a draw into the second leg and we'll beat them at Anfield. But yeah, such a goals and the way things go. And a lot of people are not pulling positives from it, but I do want to, because it's strange. We conceded a few goals against United. We give one late away. Virgil van Dijk, though, I mean, he's had about 86,000 central defensive partners in the last few games, but Virgil van Dijk has been absolutely brilliant these last few games, hasn't he?
Yeah, totally agree. I think he's been magnificent, really. And again, he's one of those. I thought the defense as a whole really kind of deserved the clean sheet. I think, outside of kind of the Alisson error, which is a poor moment, obviously, but outside of that, I thought Liverpool defended really well in the game and didn't give Spurs a sniff. I thought Conor Bradley down that right-hand side didn't give Son a look in at all. I thought Tsimikas down the left similarly dealt with a lot very well and was a decent outlet going forward. And as you say, I thought Van Dijk was utterly outstanding. And, particularly, I think back to the block, actually, after the moment of the Alisson error, absolutely brilliant. But he was brilliant all the way through. And I really loved Endo's performance alongside him. So for me, that back forward deserved a clean sheet, and unfortunately didn't get it, which is a real shame, really. But I know people find it hard to take the positives after you lose, but I think the defense, the back four's performance in general, and including Van Dijk, was one of them.
Hopefully, if anyone can hear me, we are having a few technical issues there. So we'll try and carry on there. My apologies that. So, David, just before we had the technical issues, I did want to speak about Virgil van Dijk. And I know you sort of said how good he is. Is there any worry for you a little bit that at 32 years old, he is playing all these games that maybe we want to rest in the Carabao Cup final, or do you think it's not going to have a knock-on effect on him at all?
No, I'm not too concerned because I don't expect him to be anywhere near the FA Cup this weekend, for example. I think it's a specific situation, isn't it, with how the League Cup has fallen, particularly in this semi-final. The point at which we've reached the semi-final, obviously he hasn't featured in the previous round, so it made sense for me really to, with this game being on the Wednesday, FA Cup at the weekend where you're going to see full rotation, and then obviously Nottingham Forest coming up on the Tuesday. You've got to make that kind of balance between, keeping the rhythm but also giving the rest at the right time. So I'm not too concerned about that at all, and he's obviously playing really well at the moment, so you want to keep that rhythm going.
Yeah, no two ways about it. And people, I know you're going to want to talk about this, and we want to talk about this. So, some refereeing decisions. I mean, before we talk through it, though, David, I do think it's important. I was kind of, I wouldn't say bewildered by this, maybe a bit strong, but let's just listen, people, to what Ange Postecoglou said when asked about the big decision yesterday.
You've had more than your fair share of bad luck. Did you get a slice of luck with the goal? Lucas Bergvall, lucky to be on the pitch.
Yeah, great question. No, he wasn't. He wasn't because because again, people misinterpret my comments from the other day. The rule is, and we've been told for quite a while now, that if advantage gets played, as long as it's not a cynical tackle, then the yellow card's not, because we've been screaming for it for the last 2 months. It's happened to us consistently. Have a look at our games. And we've asked the officials, and they've said, if we play advantage, as long as it's not a cynical tackle, then the yellow card doesn't get paid. Now, to me, that was pretty clear.
I've never heard anything about a rule whereas, quote unquote, as long as it's not a cynical tackle, that it doesn't count and play an advantage. I mean, do you think David Ange Postecoglou's maybe just not been briefed, shall we say, on how the rule works fully?
No, in fairness to him, he's half right, not in reference to this specific situation, but about how the rule is, because I checked in with the PGMOL. There was a situation in a Liverpool game, and forgive me, I can't actually remember which one it was. It might have been this season, whereby a player got through and a guy on a second yellow dragged him back, but the man carried on the attack and it didn't matter. And the ref didn't bring the play back and give the second yellow card after it. And I spoke to someone at the PGMOL about this and said, can you explain why there wasn't a second yellow issued in that situation? And he said, if it is kind of a drag back or anything like that, or a trip up, but the attack continues, then the player hasn't stopped a promising attack, and therefore they are not issued with another yellow card in that situation. So what he's talking about there, he's actually correct. Where he's wrong is that what the yellow card should have been for in this situation is a reckless tackle. It was a tackle that injured an opponent. It was a heavy challenge. It was diving in. He was out of control. It was definitely a yellow card worthy challenge on its own merits, never mind stopping a promising attack, which it obviously didn't do in the end. So that's why Bergvall should have been issued with a second yellow card and should have been sent off. So Ange's got this one wrong, actually.
Yeah, it just seemed, I mean, in just a blend context of this, it's a straightforward yellow. I've heard all this talk about the first one was soft, so that's irrelevant, isn't it? It's just a yellow. It's a second yellow, straightforward.
Yeah, the second the first yellow, sorry, doesn't come into it at all. And I agree. The first one was soft. Diaz is absolutely looking for it, but it's been issued. That is gone, and therefore you have to kind of ref the game in that context afterwards, which is that Bergvall makes a reckless challenge after it. It's a yellow card and he shouldn't be on the pitch to score the winning goal. So really, really frustrating for Liverpool. I think that I don't think you should dwell on it too much in the sense that, or of course the one where maybe a potential penalty for Liverpool as well. I don't think we should dwell on them too much because I think, Liverpool, what you've got to do, and the reason Liverpool have been so good this season is that you've kind of got to take the referee out of the equation by being so good that these minor decisions or even major decisions don't really affect the end result. So I think you've got to kind of keep that in mind and not necessarily fully blame the result, as maybe Arsenal supporters have done an awful lot this season. Yeah. But that doesn't take away from the fact that in isolation, it is extremely frustrating and not one you want to see.
Yeah, and it drew the ire of a lot of Reds, understandably, last night. And the other one that didn't get much conversation, I mean, from what we've seen this season, Kulusevski just whacks through the back of Curtis Jones. I mean, that's a penalty by every standard we've seen this season, isn't it?
Yeah, to be honest, at the time, it didn't really show a lot of replays of it last night, did they? So he didn't get a good angle of it, and didn't feel like it was that controversial at the time. And then I saw an angle of it back today, and he absolutely whacks him. Really surprised that they didn't kind of have a look and necessarily recommend an overturn in that situation, because it's got to be very, very close to the line with the force with which he hit him.
Yeah.
Another one where kind of disappointed. But as I say, I think Liverpool will think we've got to take it out the ref's hands. We've got to be good enough to win it anyway. But yeah, it's still extremely frustrating when those ones don't go for you.
Yeah, there's something about Liverpool at that Tottenham Stadium and big decisions that don't seem to quite go together. We'll see if there's any in the future that go that way. And the other talking point was maybe about the lineup, maybe who was starting and who wasn't at the same time. This has come up on social media today. Is there a bit of a lack of trust in some players? And you've probably seen there's a few rumours around Harvey Elliott. I mean, were you surprised that he didn't start this one at all?
I thought he might have been in contention. I wasn't completely shocked. As I say, I think this was very much a game where Slot went with kind of what you would call the first team at the moment. So I'm not hugely shocked that he went with the same midfield that he started with against Manchester United. What did surprise me around Elliott is that Jones, for me, clearly was having another poor game. I thought he wasn't very good against Manchester United, and he's been poor here. Some of the criticism, of course, is way over the top. I mean, all this talk about, he's not good enough or whatever. Him and Szoboszlai have both had that treatment at various points this season, and they've both also been heralded as the absolute answer. The fact is that players come in and out of form. This will happen. We have to accept it. So I think that criticism of Jones is over the top. But for me, when you get to around the 60-minute mark, that's an easy sub to make, is to bring Harvey Elliott on, particularly as Liverpool were kind of struggling with Spurs' low block and to unlock it. And I think he's so good at that. Brings an element of control and able to probe defenses. So it's really disappointed he didn't come on. I think obviously he's going to play against Accrington, isn't he? He's going to start that game. But even so, he could have done 20 minutes here and made an impact. So I was quite disappointed about that. And I was disappointed about his lack of minutes against Manchester United as well. Not really sure what that's all about. Hopefully it's just, I think the manager's shown he's absolutely determined to get them at peak fitness before he puts them, heavily involved. I mean, how long has Jota had to wait for a start here? So maybe it's a case of that with Elliott and getting over his injury and still just needing to fully get there to force his way in. But I hope he does. And I was disappointed he didn't get involved in some way yesterday.
Yeah, he could have made something happen when it looked like there wasn't too much going on. And people have also flagged Chiesa. There's almost the feeling that if Jarell Quansah wasn't feeling ill, would Endo have come in as well? How are you seeing it at the moment? Because there's a lot of people, and I kind of get this. There's a suggestion that, yes, we've got bodies, but it's not much of a squad if Arne Slot doesn't trust these players at certain times. It's just the same ones that keep playing time after time. Do you think there will be real minutes for Endo or Chiesa, or are you seeing it as difficult to picture that at the moment?
I think Chiesa, I totally get it. I mean, he's miles off it, isn't he, at the moment in terms of fitness. And again, I've said about Slot's exacting standards with that. I'm not really shocked that he wasn't involved in some way yesterday. My preference would be, and I think this might be the choice, is does he do 20 minutes there, or does he start against Accrington Stanley? And I would much rather him get a start and get some real important minutes in that game if that is the decision to make. Endo for me is a strange one. I've called for him before to maybe play a little bit more just to protect Gravenberch. Again, even if it's the last kind of 20 minutes of a game to see it out, he's more than capable of doing that. And I thought he did brilliantly, by the way, at centre back. Has he had a poor game when he's come in so far this season? I'm not sure he has. I think he's been really, really good. So I think there's scope to use him a little bit more. And I would maybe like to see a little bit more of the squad used going forward, to be honest. But again, I come back to the starting 11. I wasn't surprised or disappointed with the starting 11 because I think the circumstances dictated it should have been that. So I'm not shocked that Endo wasn't in that. But it's, I suppose with him, it's more of a kind of general concern that I would like to see a little bit more of him.
Yeah, definitely. It will be interesting to see how much use they get on, and like you say, where they play a part on Saturday. Going back to Sunday, though, and it's important we do this because quite rightly, Trent Alexander-Arnold got a lot of criticism because he was very poor against Manchester United. But when he came on last night, David, you've got to balance it. He looked lively, didn't he? He made a real difference.
Yeah, I think the thing that will most please the supporters and also the manager, really, some of the sprints he made getting back in. I mean, obviously Werner gets away from him a little bit at one point, but he's absolutely hammering it to get back there, really putting it in, because that was the thing that kind of garnered the most criticism, wasn't it? His body language and kind of seeming like he was jogging back at times. So I thought it was really good to see that. But then, of course, he also shows how brilliant he is going the other way. I mean, 12 passes into the final third. Nobody else makes as many as that. Well, apart from Virgil van Dijk, of course, who plays the entire 90 minutes. I think the closest after that is Ryan Gravenberch with 9. So, Trent's only on the pitch for 30 minutes. So that is incredibly impressive. Okay. And it shows you he can be really important in terms of Liverpool progressing the ball. And I think he made them look a lot more dangerous as well. So, really, really good. And I think this was important as well it's a big call to not put him in the starting 11, but when he comes on the pitch, is kind of showing that he's quickly got that United performance out of his system and that he can move on from it quickly. So really enjoyed his performance and good on him as well, because there's been so much talk and noise about him this week, but he completely put that out of his mind and put in a good performance.
Yeah, to be fair, if those keep up, the questions will dissipate very, very quickly. And I suppose the only other thing, we kind of have touched upon it, but there is a fatigue worry amongst a few. We talked about Salah, Van Dijk, Gravenberch, probably that a lot of people wouldn't have wanted them anywhere near the starting lineup, but it is quite strong. And maybe it's the last few results that have sprung it into people's mind. If we're winning, maybe fatigue doesn't come up at all. Is it a question for you or a worry for you in January at all that it is the same players being asked to go again and again and again? Is it almost a feeling of PTSD from last season when the wheels came off a little bit?
I think it absolutely is that, to the point that I think people's perceptions of kind of the size of the squad and the work that these players can get through in terms of minutes played over the course of a season has been completely skewed. There seems to be this fear that because Liverpool went for the quadruple last season and it did fall apart towards the end, people seemingly linking that to the fact that Liverpool played so many games or whatever. But for me, it was the injuries. It was the fact that Liverpool got as far as they did in all those competitions with using about 13 players. And then what you had then was those 13 players were absolutely dead on the feet by April. And the ones who were coming back were just a million miles off it in terms of rhythm. I don't think we're seeing a similar situation here. As I say, I think it made total sense to go strong in the League Cup for the first time this season, by the way, yesterday, because of the rhythm concern going into Nottingham Forest. You can't give players... Was it 10 days off? They will not look. I mean, I don't think Liverpool looked very good in the United game after 7 days without a game. So to give them 10 days off and then drop them in against Nottingham Forest, I don't think it would have helped anyone. So you've got to find a balance between, managing fatigue, which they've done in not getting them anywhere near the League Cup up to this season. We haven't seen Gravenberch in it. Van Dijk, Salah, I think had only played once in it, but only a little bit. So it is. I totally agree with you. I think it's PTSD from last season, and that's not. I've seen it said that this happened every season over the last week. No, I don't agree with that at all. It happened in one season, and as I say, I believe it was fully linked to the injuries that Liverpool had, which was unprecedented amount of injuries. And so this idea as well that the squad has to be ridiculously large to cope with it. It is not true at the moment. And I had someone tweeting me yesterday, Liverpool have to dip in the market when you look at their injuries. They have one injury at the moment, one injury, and 2 people who are ill. And you look at the bench last night, it was unbelievable. So I just think people are getting too nervous about it. All composure is seemingly gone at the moment because of a couple of squiffy performances that, to me, didn't look fatigued. They were just poor performances, to be honest. I just think people need to calm down a little bit about that. I don't really agree with the idea that these players are suddenly knackered. I'm not, as particularly as they all went on holiday last week. So I don't really buy into that, and I think people need to just chill out around it a little bit.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see, does rhythm play a part? And Liverpool 12th man appreciates all the context and the answers given there as well. So, yeah, we'll see. I mean, This weekend is an interesting one. Accrington coming up at home, the early kickoff on Saturday. When we're talking about rotation for you, David, are we talking total rotation, like massive across the board players? As funny as we just talked about Rhythm, basically being given the weekend off, essentially.
Yeah, that exactly. And this is why he had to go strong against Tottenham. I mean, it's an important game. It's the semi-final of the Cup, but it's because he knows what's coming here, which is that we aren't going to see Virgil van Dijk. Ryan Gravenberch won't be anywhere near it. Mo Salah won't be anywhere near it. Anyone who's kind of towards the top of those kind of minutes played this season will not be anywhere near this. So, these players are going to get the rest. They've just been on holiday the week before, by the way. So they're getting some nice little rests in here for everybody who's kind of concerned about fatigue. This is going to be full rotation, absolutely. I think it's going to be an unrecognisable 11, and I think that's the right approach because, as I say, the fixture schedule is crazy, but you've got a League Two side at home, and you can still name a very, very strong team. So, interested to see what this looks like, but it's not going to be anything like the 11 that we saw at Spurs.
Do you think, we talked about players like Elliott probably will be involved. Chiesa, it wouldn't be a surprise if he started at all. Do you think there might even be a case of Rio and Goma, possibly Narlo, youngsters thrown in there? It seems like McConnell even the perfect time.
Yeah, I'm not sure about Rio because I still think he's a little bit young, isn't he? Maybe he'll make the bench again. So, if Liverpool get in a decent position, it gives them the opportunity. And I know he has been training around the first team, but it still feels a little early for me to kind of throw him in. But obviously that's up to the manager and he has a better picture where he's up to. But I think, as much as you can say Chiesa is probably going to start, Nunes will be there. There's quite a few, there's some obvious switches that you can make that aren't kids. I still think there are areas, you want to rest the midfielders. So I'm sure Trey Ione will get a run out there. Endo's played an hour against Spurs, but I think there's an opportunity for him to play the full 90 minutes in this one. I'm sure he's absolutely capable of that. But then obviously in terms of other kids, I think Nallo might be close to it if Quanta's not quite over his illness. So there's loads of opportunities there. I would love to see Jayden Danns personally. I really, really rate him highly and would love him to get minutes. But it's just in terms of, as I say, if Chiesa is already up there, Nunes is already up there. Is the space in the starting lineup? Does Diaz play? Is there any sort of involvement for him? It's a strange one really in terms of where the opportunities arise. But I'm sure there'll be a good few kids involved. If not in the starting 11, then as subs at least.
Yeah, fingers crossed on that. And I suppose the bits to finish, I never thought I'd talk about illness so much, but Dominic Szoboszlai was still ill again. Do you think there is any chance he could be involved, or is it just like no risk at all in this one?
No, I think there's a good chance, actually. I kind of forgot about that initially, but yeah, because I think, you lose a little bit of rhythm, a bit of shape. So we could, if you can do 60 minutes here, it's unfair on Accrington Stanley to unleash him on them, but, needs must really. So I think it'd be good for him to get some minutes as well. So again, you're naming a fringe team, and yet we're putting in some big internationals here, some first teamers, some real quality players, and then there will be a sprinkling of kids, but it's going to be a really, really strong side. And so I'm quite looking forward to getting to Anfield at the weekend, actually. It's a bit of a no-pressure game, one you expect Liverpool to win. And I'm looking forward to seeing people like Harvey Elliott, see how they get on. I want to see more of Chiesa. So I'm really excited about the game, to be honest, and seeing a few of these players.
Yeah, maybe just almost a reset a little bit for how it's going in the league and the Carabao at the moment. And the other illness bit, Liverpool 12th man, and asked it there. It seemed that Jarell Quansah was holding his ankle at one stage on the camera, but Arne Slot's confirmed it was just illness, isn't it, more than anything? So he could even potentially be available for this, would you think?
Yeah, hopefully it's nothing too bad, and maybe it's just a 24-hour thing. A real shame for him because I think he needed the minutes and needed the confidence. So I really do hope he's well enough to come back in for this one because, again, he's one of those. I want to see him play. I want to see him get his confidence back up because he's an important part of the squad. So, hopefully he'll be over that illness by the weekend, but we'll see.
Yeah, fingers crossed on that one. And the final one I ask you, and we're going to link it to January because people are talking about that. And I get it to an extent. We're not quite sure how bad Joe Gomez is. Arne Slot doesn't give timescales, but he has said, it's bad and it's not good for him. Maybe Quansah, but there is a lot of demand, obviously, with the left back situation. nothing last night really changed that picture for you, though, did it, in terms of January and the need to recruit? It's still, bar an opportunity dropping, hard to see anything happening.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I always say I wouldn't kind of rule it out, but I do find the kind of debate around this thing of Liverpool needing a centre-half a little bit maddening, to be honest, because I just kind of don't get it, to be honest. Obviously, Liverpool get one injury at centre-half, and it's like, wow, we're down to the bare bones. But the reality is, outside of Arsenal and City, who both play kind of 4 centre-halves across the back, I can't think of a side that has 5 centre-backs and 2 first-team right-backs and 2 first-team worthy left-backs out there. You know, I just don't know where you carry these players or where they get the minutes to play, because, you know, for me, Jarell Quansah, we've barely seen him this season, yet people are saying we need an extra centre-half on top of that. You know, if they come in, then okay, that player will expect to play and maybe pick up Quansah's minutes. So then Quansah, are we saying he never plays? Are we saying we want to block his pathway and that's it? Now, you know, that's fine if people think that, if they think he's not good enough, they think, but he has to be sold in that situation. You can't keep him around because it's pointless. He won't reach his potential. He won't, you know, he has to go out and play. So for me, the centre half thing is, every time I see a knock or an injury in defence, have to sign a defender. Liverpool got so many defenders, and again, I know part of the debate is, well, you can't trust Canate, you can't trust Gomez. Again, if that's the case, you have to sell them then. You can't carry these players, and you can't carry 5 centre halves on the possibility of someone being injured. It just, a squad won't work like that. I don't think the manager would want to manage that, try and work through it. It'd just be an absolute nightmare. So I personally don't really buy into this. And I know people will completely disagree with me on this, but I think my thinking is closer to what the manager and the sporting director think than most would imagine.
Yeah, if everyone's fit and it's not too bad, it's hard to see anything getting done. The final question I should ask you, because to be fair, this comes up on Discord in the last few days from our subscribers. Is there any player you would say just keep an eye on? Not that definitely anything will happen. We're not asking you to put your neck on the line like that. But we've mentioned players like Núñez, Kelleher, even been linked potentially with Newcastle today if Dubravka, I think it is, does go. Is there anyone you think that it's worth just keeping an eye on, that an exit could facilitate something else at all?
My thinking on this generally would be that I think Liverpool's preference would be to kind of go with what they've got till the end of the season. I think the potential disruption of changing things, they'd be kind of concerned about. You know what you're getting from these players, so let's just ride this squad till the end of the season. I think that would be the preference. I think the only thing that would change that is if an offer comes in that they know they kind of can't refuse because the money's big. Be that Quivine or say Núñez, all the rumours around him. But I think it would have to be big money. Kind of, wow, this is slightly above or very, very, close to what we kind of value this player, because, you don't want to have to go out and replace a Quivine Kelleher in the middle of the season. Núñez is not maybe what Liverpool hoped he would be, but again, if you sell him, you probably have to replace him because, look, he's picked up a decent amount of minutes this season, so he is important in that regard. So I struggle to see any big sales. I think Liverpool would be reluctant to do that. I'm not completely ruling it out, but I think they would be reluctant to do it. And so the money would have to be massive. And then if that happened, they're not going to weaken the squad. So they're going to go out and do something, definitely.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people expect, as 12-man does there. And people, before you're asking, we've got nothing updated on the contracts. If we would, David would have written it and we'd be asking him about it loads, wouldn't we? So there is nothing updated there before anyone brings that. So there we go, people. A defeat in the Carabao Cup, but it is only half-time. Injury situation doesn't seem as bad. Hopefully, it is quite simple for Jarell Quansah and he's back. Hopefully, Dominic Szoboszlai could even be available in this one. It's a less pressure game against Accrington, and then the focus ramps up, doesn't it, for Forest after that. So all it leaves me to say, as ever, is for the time, the insight, and for answering all the questions that we put to you, David. Thank you for that.
Pleasure.
And ladies and gents, that was another Media Matters for Anfield Index.